Hello, welcome to Off the Roll. I'm your host, Troy Hirschman. Today we're talking to Glen Snow. Glen has been involved with athletic training for over 50 years. He was a student of Sayers Bud Miller, Jim Dickerson, and Ron Sendre, and worked with Bud Miller at the University of Washington, as well as Dick Hoover, NATA Hall of Fame athletic trainer. Finally, Glen got a chance to be his own man at Floyd Central High School, becoming the head athletic trainer there, and designing and building one of the first modern high school athletic training rooms in the country. While at Floyd Central, Glen was the National High School Athletic Trainer of the Year. Glen's had a remarkable career and a great journey, and this podcast is just the start of a couple of podcasts that will probably explain Glen's total career and what he's been involved with for over these 50 years. So let's go off the roll with Glen Snow.
Hello, this is Troy Hirschman. I'm in Floyds Knob, Indiana, and this is the second episode of Off the Roll. Today our special guest is Mr. Glen Snow, and so we're going to get started with Glen. He's going to tell us some stories and just kind of get started with things. So Glen, talk to me about how you got started in athlete training. What was kind of your first memory of what you saw, why you wanted to get involved, those types of things?
Well, I think I was very fortunate because I had a high school football coach, a gentleman by the name of Forrest McCaffrey. He had played football at Purdue, and he played football with Pinky Newell. He asked me if I would be interested in taking a summer athletic training course for students. And I said, well, okay, what's an athletic trainer? So he kind of explained that a little bit to me. I said, sure. So I took my first course from Kramer Products and got a certificate and a shirt and a patch. And then I became the kind of official, unofficial student athlete trainer for New Albany High School football. On one of those teams was a guy by the name of Bruce Scott. Bruce Scott was from Galena, Indiana, played football at New Albany High School, and went to Ball State. When I was interested, after 2 years, I became a little more interested, and I was intrigued. And I'd received a letter from Texas Christian, the Brown brothers down there. My first letter from a college saying, would you be interested in coming here? I was going, wow, that's kind of interesting. My dad got a little excited about that. All right, got funds coming on here. So I said, okay. Well, I asked Coach McCaffrey, and he says, well, let's go talk to Pinky. So I go to Pinky, and I did not know him, and he sat down with Coach Mack and myself, and we talked. And he goes, well, said, I think I'm trying to send people to Ball State University. My student, one of my first student athletic trainers, is the head trainer there, Sayers Bud Miller, and he's trying to build a program. I think this would be a perfect fit for you. I said, well, I don't know anything about Ball State. And Coach McCaffrey goes, well, I do. And one of my ex-coaches is an assistant coach at football at Ball State under Ray Laufin, who's the head football coach there. I'm going, okay. So what do? I go back, we write a letter. I get a letter back from Bud saying, yes, I'd like to invite you up. So Bruce Scott is home. He calls me and says, why don't you come up this weekend if you can do it? I'd like to show you around, and Bud wants to talk to you. I got on a Trailways bus in New Albany. It was a 5-hour stop at every nip.
Oh my gosh.
Granny coming to the Muncie, the back roads. And finally got there, and Bruce picked me up, and I'm going, Lord, I'm tired. So I got put in a dorm room because one of the guys was gone, and I was staying there with him. He was another New Albany guy, a guy named Tom Wolf. And I knew his family pretty well. It was like old homie.
Yeah.
So I go over. This is a Thursday night. I went up. So on Friday morning, I went to class over in the Irving Gym, what we call I guess it was men's gym at that time. And got to go to class, went into the athletic training room, listened to everything, and really had a chance to see what that campus was like. It was still a teacher's college when I first started there. and had a lot of laughs. And Bruce goes, "Come on!" He showed me around. We went to all the buildings, got to meet some of the coaches, and I'm going, "This is pretty neat." So before I left, Bud goes, "I want you to write me a letter on why you want to do this, and then make sure kind of say I want to apply." Says, and then we'll see if we're going to let you come in. So I'm writing back. I'm going, "What do you mean? I'm going to have to apply?" It really wasn't an application. It was really a letter about why I wanted to do this and why I picked Ball State.
They've come a long way from that point of somebody like Jim who said, "Hey, who wants to make a little money?" to now you have to apply to get in.
Yeah, and so I did. I wrote a letter, but I was in school the next fall. I went up there. I was a Wagner Warrior there at Ball State, and that was a far distance from the gym. I mean, that's a long walk.
Yeah.
They wouldn't let me come over there the first quarter. There was Bud Miller, there was Dick Hoover, there was Jim Dickerson, and then there was Bruce Scott. There was another guy named Padfield that was involved, but I never did see him, so I wasn't really involved with him.
Yeah.
But after the first quarter, we were on quarter system. I got my grades, and Bud calls me and says, "You need to come over." So I did, and he goes, "Okay, you did really well your first quarter. Nobody else has done that well." And I said, "Okay, what's that mean?" "I'll send you a note." I'm going, "Okay, what's that mean again?" So I end up going to back Wagner Warrior Land. That was like on a Friday, maybe. On Monday, somebody had put a note in my mailbox, and it was from Bud, a letter. And I still have that letter someplace, saying, "Glenn, we'd like to invite you into the brotherhood at that time of athletic training at Ball State." And then I got to gradually, over the course of the next part of that year, they let me get a little bit more attached to what I was doing. Now, what is interesting is that before that first year's up, I had the opportunity to work with, learn from, basically side-by-side practical knowledge with Bud, with Bruce, who was a senior, with JD, with Dick Hoover, and with Sendre. Now, those four people were the foundation of what we have now.
Yeah.
And the amount of laughs, the amount of hard work we did was amazing. But the bottom line is, I started in the old ball gym, little tiny cubbyhole there, just like a lot of other people did. And about the second ball game, we were headed toward the football field that we have now. And we played against, I think it was Butler, and the coach at Butler was Tony Hinkle. So not only did I see Ray Laughlin, I saw Tony Hinkle. We had the first game there. It was jam-packed. We didn't even have a dressing room. It was just concrete floor and conduit, but we were in the new facility. It was a lot of fun. And from then on, it was really kind of a labor of love. I have to give Bud and Hoover and JD a lot of credit. Now, Ron came in a little later during that year. But those guys guided me, they nurtured me, and they were hard on me. It was not an easy gig. We worked numerous hours. I mean, I would go to class from maybe 8 or 9 in the morning till 1 or 2. I was in the training room at 1 or 2, depending on the quarter. And I didn't get home till 6 or 6:30. It was trial by fire.
Yeah.
But what I really liked about it is I got really engaged in what was going on, and I watched how Bud treated people. I watched how JD interacted and engaged in people. I watched Hoove really as a clinician. And then later on, I learned just how good Bruce Scott was. Yeah. Bruce became a really good athletic trainer. My first memory of Bud, he guided me. He told me what classes to take. In the second or third quarters, I ended up having to take senior level courses. I had the first course of athletic training under Bud. And then later, I think that was just mid quarter. The third quarter, I ended up taking a young exercise physiologist class by the name of Dave Costle. And Bud asked, I don't know anything about exercise physiology. He said, what are you going to learn? He said, but you're the guinea pig. You're going to learn the fire. You're going to do exactly what he tells you to do. So off I go. Semester 2, I had Bud. Going into that class was culture shock. There was about 35, 40 people in that class. But as I took class, you would sit down. You better get there early because the boards, they had old chalkboards. They were filled on all three sides of that. And if you weren't there, he gave you about 5 or 6 minutes. If you didn't have that down, you started racing board 1, filling it up. And we did that for 20 or 25 minutes before he even lectured.
Oh my goodness.
And it was, so by the time the end of the quarter, that second quarter, there's probably only about 12 of us left.
Yeah.
And most of them are juniors and seniors, and me, the rookie, freshman. I can't tell you how difficult the class was, and I can't tell you how trying it was because I really was a rookie. I mean, it was just starting with the athletic training out of tape, even just learning a little anatomy. And Bud was not easy. I mean, he was working on his PhD at Stanford. So he thought I should be right his level. You know, he would say things like, but I don't know what you're talking about. He just laughed and had those glasses hanging out over his nose. You know, I'm going, well, you think it's funny. I'm struggling here, you know.
Yeah.
But he would have the other athletic trainers kind of work with him. So lo and behold, I got through that class. And the final, I don't think I've ever taken a final like that in my life. It had everything from true to false to multiple choice to essay. It was about a 10-page final. And you had an hour or whatever length of time they gave you to take that little blue book, plus in those days the old ditto type test. And he told me before I took the test, he says, now, you must get at least an A- on this test, or you're going to have to go back to square one and start over.
A-.
I mean, here I'm sweating. I'm going, my God. So I took that test, took the practical, and ended up sitting in that training room in men's gym, sitting on a bench, waiting to see how I was going to make it. And I mean, he was flunking people. The highest grade to that time was, I think, a C+. These are seniors, you know, and I'm going, I don't have a shot at this at all. He did it. He played no favorites. I ended up with an A-. I got an A by 1.5 points. I about passed out.
That skin of your teeth there.
Yeah. And I'm going, my God, I can't believe I did it. So he's laughing so funny, so buddy. He goes, you made it, rookie. And then here I was kind of officially in the game.
Yeah.
You know, I'd been accepted. I passed the first class, got an A- out of it, and here I am a freshman. Next semester, I ended up with Costello. In Costello, he had just started his lab, and he had a lot of bells and whistles, and he was doing special things to the pool with the weight and all that. Well, I was the guinea pig. Everybody else was seniors. Everybody else except me. So I ended up doing that. And he took muscle biopsies. I ran like a crazy dude on a treadmill. He'd get me running. I just go, I'd run like crazy. He'd lay me down. All people would be looking. He had this little gadget and stick it in my muscle, like a hypo. And then pull out a little muscle tissue and then look at it and analyze it. I'm going, Willikers, you're killing me. And put a Band-Aid on it and said, we'll be doing this again tomorrow. You know? So, I mean, it was trial by fire.
Yeah.
Now, Dave Costello ended up being one of the world's best exercise physiologists and running all different types of books, you know, and classes, Academy of Sports Medicine. And I got to be really good friends with him because I was with him for 4 years. Yeah. I was a guinea pig for 4 straight years. Now, I think I got a B+ out of that class.
What a way to get to know a guy.
He was juicy, but I tell you what, I laughed, real skinny.
Yeah.
You know, the only thing that saved me is I'd wrestled in high school, and I still had a little bit of fitness. So it wasn't going to kill me. I might pass out, but I still going to get it done. So here I am, first semester. I'd barely get in. At least I thought I did. And then Bud makes me jump through the hoops. And then I had to take that class. And then I ended up with hostel. And then had to get through that class. What was interesting, I had partners in the journal. Jay Bradley was in my class. Jerry Bell was in my class. And we all had those similar struggles. But my Lord have mercy, it was something. But I think the thing I remember most about this was the engagement I had to be around those guys and take side by side with them, listen to them, learn from them, watch how they dealt with coaches and athletes. Really got into kind of the psychology of what's in that player's head.
Yeah.
And for a small school time, we really had some pretty good athletes. Football was really good that year, and of course, volleyball had started there. Matter of fact, that was one of the first things I ever did on Ball State's campus. Is that JD says you will be the student athletic trainer for volleyball for the next month or whatever he said. And I said, I'm thinking about what was going on in my backyard,
Yeah.
So Coach Shondell, they didn't go to practice. I'm going, this is okay. This is pretty fun. So that was my first assignment. We were playing Ohio State, whatever little conference they had put together. And we had a basketball game that afternoon, volleyball that night. And I was kind of upset because, Indiana's basketball. I was hoping to work basketball with Coach Hinga. Didn't work out. So what we did was I got there early, watched some of the games, maybe 2,000 fans of basketball. Go in and we're treating everybody for volleyball, getting them ready. Come out about 7:30 to warm up. You couldn't find a seat in the place. I don't know what that place held. There had to be 5,000 or 6,000 people watching volleyball.
That was in men's gym.
Men's gym.
Yeah.
And my first 5 minutes, somebody from Ohio spikes that ball or hits one of our kids right in the face, pops his nose, blood's going everywhere, and Dickerson's sitting there and says, "Well, you're going to get bloody today." So here I am with gauze and rags and cotton balls to get it stopped, got him back out there, and I just kind of laughed because it wasn't 5 years into my career that I had an injury like that. And over the course of 50 years of this practice, I had been involved in volleyball since 1967 in some fashion, either with teams and or with working with them.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a lifelong gig. I didn't know what was going to happen, but it did. And the same thing was with athletic training. Into that year, Bud left to go to Stanford to finish up his PhD. Hoover left to become the head athletic trainer at Northwestern. So here was JD and Sendre. They were going to be the co-head trainers for a period of time until they decided what they were going to do. And I realized early on that it was a family affair, and even though they were far away, we were all still well connected. And as years went on, it even proved more so as we did that. So here I am. By that time, I'm probably a sophomore, beginning of my junior year. I'm working volleyball. I was working football. Those are the two main ones. And I worked wrestling. Pete Samuels, who was the coach, asked me to work that. We drove everywhere in it looked like a big, huge limo. And I always got stuck in the back. It was colder than the dickens. I couldn't hardly get it done.
Yeah.
It was so cold. But I wrestled. I understood it. So I worked that off and on for the 4 years I was there. It was fun because those guys, you didn't get a lot of accolades for wrestling. But I had a variety. Now you got to realize we did not have any women during that time.
That was going to be my next question. I was going to ask you. The thing that a lot of people don't realize is at that time there were like intramurals maybe, right?
Yes.
But it wasn't there was no sponsored women's sports.
No Title IX stuff.
Yeah, so everything was men's. You had men's gymnastics, you had wrestling, you had swimming, you had football, basketball, whatever.
Unfortunately for those ladies during that time, probably the closest thing they had was there might have been a club program somewhere, cheerleading.
Yeah,
that was basically it. And I always think back. Now, by the time as I got into my graduate work, things started to change. And Title IX was coming into play, which I thought was appropriate to allow them to play. Now, sometimes it got a little out of hand, but hey, that's the way it is with any new program.
Did you spend any time at the health center?
Some, not very much.
Yeah,
Not very much. Now, Bud worked in the morning in the health center, so did Hoover. So did a guy named Terry Franks.
okay.
And Terry ended up staying at the health center, but Bud would always come over in the afternoon, and Hoover would come over in the afternoon. But they would treat athletes during the morning over at the health center, along with regular students with physical therapy, and then they would come over, and then we would start. And it started about 1, and we got done about 6:30.
Yeah.
And you had to kind of weigh it in. Their passion for education was pretty obvious. They wanted people like Jay and I and Jerry. I mean, there were about 6 or 8 of us. But us three were the last man standing.
Yeah.
And we're all still doing stuff today.
Yeah.
You know, and that's 50 plus years. And I am eternally grateful to Bud for involving me in that educational process, because I think what I didn't realize is those tests that I was taking as a freshman were the precursor to the exam that I took to get my license in athletic training. The practical test, same thing. I mean, I remember him doing certain things, and he would ask certain students to do. Then he'd look at me and do some off-the-wall taping. I'm going, okay, I remember that.
Yeah.
But what's that mean? And I ended up realizing that over a 4 and 5 year period, they were developing that test. And I was part of it. Early years, so was Jay and so was Jerry. You know, it was, didn't know it, but it was pretty interesting. So now here I am, sophomore year, I believe, and Bud's gone, Hoov's gone. Now, who are they going to bring in? They bring in a physical therapist who's really a wonderful guy. He didn't know anything about athletics. But really, Ron and Jim ran that program.
Right.
But what that allowed me to do was to get more experience, more hands-on experience. Now, they just didn't let me hang out and do what I wanted to do. Right. They followed. There was a lot of engagement, you know, and they made sure I would do things. Each guy taught me something very, very different. Bud was really more of an academic clinician, and that's what his focus was. You know, his dad was a team physician at Purdue, so he almost a physician-like person.
Yeah.
And with Pinky, and then he grew up with Pinky, and that's where Pinky was. So here's Bud doing this. Then I had Who was a clinician, but he was innovative and off the wall a lot of times, and he was always that way. He was always interested in business, or the business of athletic training.
Right.
So when he went to Chicago, he was looking at things a lot differently. Then you had JD. JD was what I would call the very best practical individual who could take the book learning and put it in a practical sense. And then it made more sense to me. That's the way I learned anything. I had to do instead of just read.
Right.
So when I read, okay, that makes sense. But when I did it, that really made sense. So he was very good at that. So was Sendre. You know, Sendre, that's the way they thought about it. But they also, it was an engagement of students. And what I mean by that is we started to become a family, and we would do things together. We would have a picnic, and we would do this and do that together. So we became all really close friends. I'm still really good friends with Jay Bradley and Jerry Bell.
Yeah.
You know, it's almost like a boot camp. You know, we went through the boot camp, together. And educationally, it was really a precursor to all the licensure stuff that we ever thought about now. I always wonder how, if Bud was alive, because he died fairly young at the age of 50. I always wondered what he would think of what's going on over the last 50 years or 40 years.
Yeah.
I think his part of it he would be extremely pleased with. I think that the part of it he would hate it. He would just hate it. So it would be interesting. And Hoover was the same way. I mean, even to his dying days, Hoover was always questioning why we were doing stuff in the association. It was just a whole different learning experience. Probably out of that whole group, as I look kind of back, the guy learned a lot more practical experience than Bruce Scott. Bruce left Ball State, went to PT school, ended up at Washington as an assistant.
Okay.
And then after that,
This is University of Washington,
in
Seattle.
Seattle. Yeah. And then he ended up going to Arkansas as the head football trainer. He ended up with the Detroit Lions, and then he came back to Seattle and was head trainer with the Seahawks. What's important about that is Bud was the head trainer at Washington.
Yeah.
And when I got out of school, my first job was an assistant athletic trainer at the University of Washington. And that was primarily because of my knowledge of Bud and of Bruce. And I worked there a year, but it was obvious that they wanted me to get a master's. I'm like, I can't get a master's degree and work 18 hours a day.
Right.
I mean, that was those days Pac-10. That was big time athletics with Pac-10. We were playing Oregon and playing USC and UCLA and all those. Where at Ball State, we were playing Butler, or St. Joe or Valpo. And that's nothing to say they're bad programs. It was a completely different level of funding. Ball State, if we played in front of 8,000, 9,000, that was a big crowd. Go to Seattle, we're playing 40, 50,000.
So who were you taking care of in Washington then? What teams what athletes what were you taking care of?
I started out with freshman football.
Sure.
And worked with them. When I got out of that, I was assigned to wrestling and skiing.
Okay.
I had no experience with, but it was fairly easy. There wasn't that many of them. And then I had track and field. What I find interesting with that is football was fairly easy. I had maybe 30 freshmen or whatever number, and all of them, some of which ended up being All-Americans. They were that good. And then the wrestling team, when I got there, they almost won a national title the year before. And I'd had an opportunity to work that Final Four, that wrestling finals in Chicago. Guess who the head trainer was for that? It was Dick Hoover and Ron O'Neill, my friend and big brother. He was his assistant. So I would go up and I'd work it. And that was the year, and most people won't realize this, but there was a guy named Dan Gable. He was from Iowa State. He had never lost a match ever in that his era.
Yeah.
Some stupid like 108-0 or something like that. Well, Washington at that time had a kid by the name of Larry Owens. Larry Owens was really good. He was a sophomore, and he upset Dan Gable in the last college match in the last 13 seconds of that last match. And I don't think I've ever witnessed a crowd being that still and that quiet for at least 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And then going wild. What's even funnier is that I didn't realize a year later I was going to be the head athletic trainer for wrestling at the University of Washington. And we traveled all over the United States. I was the first athletic trainer to ever be allowed to go on road trips with University of Washington wrestling. They had a little coach named Jim Smith, and he realized I wrestled, and I kind of understood.
Right.
And he went to Bud and says, he needs to travel with me. And I wanted him to travel. So I was all over the United States. Did the national meet. I was at all the big schools that wrestled, Iowa State, Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
Probably the most besides Larry Owens upsetting Gable, we ended up hosting Iowa State, who was the national champions for like 2 or 3 years in a row. in Seattle. Most of those schools never crossed the mountains.
Yeah.
They didn't think it ever existed.
Yeah.
Nobody ever, and they never been beat by anybody. Really, I don't think anybody passed the Rockies ever. So Iowa State comes to beautiful downtown Seattle, and they packed in about 10,000 people into that Edmondson Pavilion. The other thing is that they had a wrestler by the name of Chris Taylor. Chris Taylor was about a 400-pound heavyweight, and he was an animal. And he was also an Olympic wrestler, I think gold medal wrestler.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Big. We had to weigh him in on a meat platter that they had to bring in a platform.
Yeah.
And they wore a yellow robe. I'll never forget this. Gold yellow robe. He could not get the daggone robe tied in the front. He was so big. So he just let it hang. And when he raised his neck up, he would kind of pop his neck, and he had a row of warts all along, and he made sure everybody saw him, and he would just go. And I'm going, oh Lordy, we're in trouble. But we had a pretty good little heavyweight, but he only weighed like 220.
Yeah.
And I'm going, oh my God, this guy, we're going to get killed. At the end of that, we start wrestling. We are tied. We're up by 1 going into the heavyweight match. Chris Taylor has to pin our kid. If he doesn't pin him, we win. If he pins him, they win.
Yeah.
So for 6 minutes, it was a cat and mouse. And our dumb kid, he takes him down. He gets him off balance and takes him. He's ahead. So we get to the third quarter, or the third part of the match, the last 2 minutes. Last minute, Taylor catches him, hooks him, and has him parallel to him, and just flips him and hits that mat hard, and I won't say it didn't knock him out, but it stunned him.
Yeah.
And Taylor flops on him. And I'm going, oh, we're going to get this. And somehow, our heavyweight flips. He gets on his belly. So he's still losing now.
Right.
But he has to be pinned. There are about 15 seconds, 20 seconds left, and Chris Taylor's got him hooked, and he's getting him up to a position where he's going to put him on the mat, and we're probably going to get pinned, and it's over. So lo and behold, I don't know how he did it. Our heavyweight squirted out of that, stood up, and he took the guy down. Took him down, and all this has been happening in 20 seconds. And we ended up winning. We won the damn thing. First time they'd ever been beat by anybody past the Rockies.
Yeah.
And it was crazy. The crowd went nuts, and they ran to the mat. I got knocked over. I was on the floor. People had a gold sport coat on. I had footprints in the back of it.
Oh my
Coach
goodness.
Smith got knocked down. He's sitting, he's shaking his head, and I'm looking at him. He finally grabs me. He sits up and says, "Well, I guess we better watch and enjoy this." Oh, it was. That's one of those athletic moments that you don't really know you're going through, but it was unbelievable. But I was very fortunate that Bud allowed me to travel with him.
Yeah.
The other person I really got to know about doing the wrestling gig, and I worked with him probably 4 or 5 years after that. I would go to the Nationals and work with him. Was Don Cooper, Dr. Don Cooper from Oklahoma State. He was a big-time lecturer at NATA. He was a big-time wrestling doctor. And he ran the medical staff at the Nationals, no matter where. So he asked me to do that. Where were we?
Don Cooper.
Yeah. Don Cooper and I became really pretty good friends. He was funny. He was like Jim Dickerson. He could tell a joke and a story. And for many, many years, he always spoke as one of the headliners on one of the days at the NATA.
Yeah.
But I got to be really good friends with him. And when we went to the Nationals, I became kind of an expert in putting on ear cast, Floridian cast.
Yeah.
And he would aspirate it. I would come in, pressurize it, and put the Floridian cast. And we would just line them up. And So we had people from all over really all over the world.
Yeah.
And for all the colleges. So we were able to do that.
And were you almost the only athletic trainer there?
Well, they always had people local, whoever was hosting.
But nobody that was with those teams.
And I just kind of went, and he took care of it. I mean, he said, I'll pay for it just to get here. And sometimes I stayed with him. Sometimes I stayed in my own room, just kind of depending on what was available. And I did that for 4 or 5 years until I really started getting more involved in Floyd Central.
Yeah.
And then I had to back off a bit. But Don taught me a lot about wrestling. Years later, I became really close friends with a doctor by the name of Bernie Feldman. Bernie Feldman was an emergency room doctor. His claim to fame was he kind of took over from Don Hoover, and he ended up being the chief team physician for the Olympic team for USA Wrestling. And I probably could have done that because he always wanted me to help join him.
Yeah.
But I was so busy by that time, I really couldn't take off and spend weeks upon time in Europe, and do stuff because they did all the games. Yeah. And I guess my thoughts on that is I got opportunities that I don't know why I got them, but I got them. And I don't know how smart I was because I worked my tail off. But the bottom line is I was smart enough to realize I was doing something special, and I was learning, and I was engaged with people I never thought I'd ever be engaged with.
Right.
But years later would pay off tenfold.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key to it. When you work side by side with people, you really get a flavor for what this profession is all about. Now, I don't like to lecture this because I think doing some of the things we're doing now is probably pretty good academically. But I think we're missing the point of really engaging kids to really understand what they're getting into. I think if you're going traditional athletic training, it's pretty tough. And a lot of kids don't want to do that. Everybody wants to get a PhD and teach. They don't have any experience. What are you going to teach? Right. Here, read chapter 10. What I want is to be able to teach people and then have them engaged in what they're supposed to be doing. And needless to say, they need to be overseen. Yeah. But there's ways of doing that. But that's my lecture for that.
No, I think you're right on the money. I think that it's funny because I remember when I worked at CIO, I would get into discussions with Dr. Tom Severe, and I would kind of say what you're saying a little bit. I would not complain, but just have concerns about education, where athletic training education was trying to reinvent the wheel when medical education has been doing this all along. And the old adage of see one, do one, teach one still applies with not any medical profession with that. And when you eliminate the do one, teach one, it's pretty tough. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, I will tell you that, I was licensed for 51 years. I just gave up my license. And I did that on purpose. I don't think my skills were sharp. I'd step in if somebody was sick at a ball game and stuff like that. But doing the day-to-day, I first of all, I couldn't. And I didn't want to. But I could help people out. And I did that all over Southern Indiana. They need somebody extra. I would do it. But I think the thing that scared me the most is sometimes you place a rookie athletic trainer in a setting. And I saw this happen a couple of times. One very seriously. There was a football player that got hit pretty hard, became unconscious, and stopped breathing. Well, the young lady at that time, and there was also a guy. Both of them were rookies. What they were doing, and it was like they knew what they had to do, but they became paralyzed, mentally paralyzed. So I happened to be on the sideline talking to one of the doctors, and he goes, "I think we need to get out there." So we went out there, and I had to give CPR to that kid. And while he was doing something with his neck, now he ended up not having a neck problem, but he quit breathing. Right. And it didn't take long, maybe less than a minute. He had quit turning blue, and he ended up starting to breathe. And it just got in the right situation. But those two rookie trainers, now first of all, they were embarrassed, and they shouldn't be embarrassed. Right. If you've never been around that, that's pretty scary.
Right.
But told told them, I said, don't be embarrassed, learn from it,
Right.
and try to make sure this doesn't happen again. If you're going to have to do this, maybe there'll be somebody else, and you're going to have to do it.
Right.
So you got to be able to do it. That's one thing. I guess I gave CPR 3 or 4 times. I'll knock on wood here. Thank God they all lived. And
Yeah.
but one of the most interesting ones, I was with Rich Perry when he was in Seattle.
Yeah.
He was at a high school, and I think it was an all black school at that time called Garfield High School. And he wanted me to come watch him play. They had a great basketball team. And I said, sure. Well, there was this huge fella, big guy. I mean, he was bigger than Rich, and Rich at that time was 300 pounds. He was eating popcorn. And next time we hear this hollering, and the guy had passed out and had fallen down in the bleachers, kind of hooked in there. So I ran over. I said, Rich, I can't get him turned over. I'm going to tell him. So we got over. He was a black fella, but he wasn't breathing.
Right.
And his lips were dark purple. And finally got him over. And I said, and this one you did the compressions and then the breathing. I said, I got the compressions, you do the breathing. So we're doing the compressions, he's doing the breathing, and all of a sudden, the guy starts breathing. And I look up at Rich, and he was like a chipmunk. The guy had blown a whole bag of popcorn into his mouth.
Oh my God.
And it wasn't funny, but I started smiling, and Rich is going, he spews out that popcorn, and the guy comes, and the paramedics got there.
Yeah.
They had a hell of a time getting him out, but they got him out. And the guy survived. He was very appreciative. Actually, I think the guy came back before the end of the game and was able to thank him.
Did you buy Rich a bag of popcorn?
Anytime I look at him, I said, Rich, let's get us some popcorn. I can't say exactly what he says. Yeah, you're right. He wouldn't do that. It was funny. But, I mean, that's some experience. I mean, we still laugh about that today, about the big popcorn fiasco. But, I mean, you never expect that stuff.
Right.
And I think that's what was, I think those kind of things, whether it was in college or in different types of jobs associated with it, you learn from every one of them.
Right.
So when I left Washington for 2 reasons. Not because it was a bad job, because I had a wonderful job as a young athletic trainer.
Right.
But I wanted my master's degree. And I really wanted to try to see if I could run my own show.
Right.
That was the 2 things I was really interested in. I always thought I wanted to do high school athletics. But I was always pigeonholed. And this is really about Hoover and Bud. They wanted me to become proficient in college. And in those days, when you got to a certain level, they pushed you into the NFL as an assistant. And I had 2 opportunities to do the NFL, and I turned them both down because I didn't really want to do that. So I did the college. I'd been in high school as a student. I did the 2 colleges, Ball State and University of Washington. I traveled all over. And then they offered me this job at Floyd Central High School. And I said, and I had student colleges. And they were young, they were growing. It was a good academic school, mostly all good old country kids.
So who came in and reached out to you? Was it the principal? Was it the athletic director? Was it the superintendent? Was it all 3? I mean,
none of the above. It was the head football coach, Joe Sequeira.
Okay.
Joe Sequeira was one of my mentors at Ball State. He played football there. He was the first scholarship. He and his brother, the first scholarship football athletes that Ball State had. He was my assistant coach in New Albany High School. He oversaw the student athletic trainers and the managers. So he became the new head football coach at Floyd Central, and he wanted an athletic trainer. So he called me and said, would you be interested in having student talk there under him? I said, yeah, that would be a pretty good. I think it'd be
So
good.
what's the time frame on this?
This would have been 72 or 3, something like that. 72, I guess.
Yeah, not a lot of high school athletic trainers,
Very few.
if any at all. Yeah.
There were several in Texas.
Yeah.
There were maybe 1 or 2 in Indiana.
Yeah.
I think Howard Katz was one, and there was a guy in West Lafayette. maybe 3,
Yeah.
and really nobody south of Indianapolis.
Yeah.
Me,
Yeah.
to my knowledge, there might have been somebody that I didn't know who it was. So Joe Square reached out to me, and I said, "Well, yeah, I said, I'll be home here shortly for a little bit. So come on over." It was a bare bones program for all sports. They had a closet for training, literally a large closet. He says, "This is where we got to start. Then we got to build from there." I said, "Well, if I want to try something from the ground up, this is the place to start." So I go back and I tell Bud, and Bud says, "I understand. Go on." And I said, I don't want to lose you, but if we're going to lose you, this is the way to go."
Right.
So then I go to Floyd Central. And it was interesting because I drove all the way out there in this old junker white Ford. We used to call it the Virgin Fairlane Ford. It wasn't a Virgin after I got there because of all the trials and tribulations. I drove it all the way back, and the thing collapsed on me as I got to my mom and dad's house. But I was here, and got a place to stay. I went in to see the principal, and he was just a great guy. Lawrence Moore. Lawrence Moore was what I would call one of the most sophisticated building principals I've ever been around. But he engaged kids. He knew kids. He knew his staff. And he was a great administrator. I go in and sit down, and he goes, "Mr. Snow, I really don't know what the hell you do, but I understand you're pretty good at it. If you want the job, it's yours. I'll tell the superintendent I want you. If you want to be here. If you don't want to be here, I don't want you." Mr. Moore, I want to be here. Here's the other thing. Don't come and ask me for permission. You do it. And then if it's wrong, I'll come and tell you, and then don't do it again. That's pretty good. I like that.
Yeah, that's good.
He says, "We'll take care of you as best we can. We're small, but we're gonna grow." So that fall, when we start, I had this broom closet, the shop class. I got to know the shop guy. He built me, I call it an industrial strength taping table. Matter of fact, it still exists to this day. After 50 years, Becky's got it someplace.
Yeah.
It's an icon. But it was going to take a war to build that baby up. But we ended up putting that in there. We had one old table that they had bought years ago, about in the 40s. I had that and a little steel cabinet. That was it. And they put together, everybody, all the little teams, all had a little budget. Took them all the way and gave me a budget. I think it had like $700 in it. It was pretty good.
Yeah.
So guess what? I bought supplies, and then guess who starts showing up and getting me stuff? J.D. Dickerson. He says, "Here, test a sample of this. Oh, hey, we got this in. Try this." And I was able to add to it.
Yeah.
The other thing I was able to do in those early years, well, I've been there for a short period of time, and then Bruce Scott became the head trainer with the Seahawks. He called me and said, "You want to come out and work summer ball?" Well, first of all, I could use the money. So
Yeah.
it coincided with me leaving classes, catch a plane, and as the classes were over, I had like 3 weeks or 4 weeks before football, high school football.
Right.
So I'd go to Seattle. We'd work, and I would help them set up their camp in Katy, Washington. We drove all the way across the state, set it up. I'd work a week and a half, and then I'd head back and do Floyd Central High School. The good thing about that was that I became really good friends, even better friends with Bruce, and then Jimmy White, who's the Hall of Fame athletic trainer, who became the head trainer some 20 some odd years there. We became really close friends, and he would come to my house, I'd come to his. Spent about 2 weeks every year in Seattle doing projects together. But the theme there is, when you do NFL stuff, they have a whole different system. In the way they treat their athletes and the products. They get so much free stuff.
Right.
Well, Jimmy would say, "We don't need all this stuff. Here, let's ship it. Ship it back to Floyd Central." I go, "Okay." So you get these big, huge coolers that they used to put fish in on the boats.
Yeah.
They would get probably a half dozen of those. They can't use them, so they give them away.
Yeah.
So I would fill it all up with stuff and then lock it up. And at that time, I didn't really know anything about UPS. I shipped it by Greyhound bus.
Oh, really?
And shipped that baby into New Albany. Joe Sequeira, the football coach, would pick it up. And then I'd ship another one. Every week I shipped something in. And if they had an overabundance of stuff, like they had these moleskin stirrups,
Yeah.
pre-cut, and I thought that's pretty cool. And I learned how to use them really well. So next thing I know, I had like 500 of them shipped to me. You know, Jimmy said, we don't need all those. Ship that stuff to me. So the kids at Floyd Central, even though I was in this little cubbyhole, they were being shown and having used on them stuff that the NFL was doing.
Yeah.
You know, and they go, what's this? I said, this is a new type of stuff. Put it on. And they go, I like that. Well, that's good for me. Bad if they went to college because the athletic trainer at the college never had any of this stuff. So they come back and say, you treat me better. I said, no, I treat you differently.
Yeah.
You know, they're doing the best they can. I did the best I can. What was really key is that Floyd Central was going through a big growth spurt, and they were going to build a facility. Well, the architect was a good friend of mine. And he comes in and says, Snowball, we're going to put this right here because you're going to help design the training room, the new gymnasium, and the 4 health classroom. So I said, okay, I can do that.
Yeah.
So we designed, he goes, now, make sure it's all you want, plus some. Okay. Well, our training room was set up, probably ended up being one of the top 3 largest high school training rooms in the nation. And I would say, having a little experience with the NFL at that time, it was bigger than probably half the NFL training rooms. I mean, it was unbelievable. Well, I thought, well, I'm going to get cut, you know, and once I get to the school board and they look for money. Well, just so happens I had saved one of the school board members' kids from a very serious accident. So when it came to cut, they didn't touch it. And I'd made it so damn big that I thought, well, and they never cut an inch off of it. And then they put a door to my classroom. So not only did I have my classroom, I had the athletic training room. I had a doctor's office with all the supplies. I had my office, I had storage, I had a shower room, locker room. I mean, and I'm going, and I remember Chet Michelle, who was the architect, he came out and goes, I don't know what you did, but you got everything you wanted. And it's locked in now. You're going to have this facility. And I'm going, you got to be kidding. Well, as the word spread, then people wanted to see it. So then it became a showcase. A lot of people in Indiana, you know.
When I was a student of Vincennes, I came over with Mark Goodrich.
Yeah.
Steve was in there, and that was part of our tour.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, people would come in, and then by that time, I had been asked to be on the Special Education Committee, of course, headed up by Bud Miller.
Yeah.
And guess who else was on it? Ron Sendre.
Yeah.
And then there was a whole cadre of big-time college trainers. Toe Dean at New Mexico, Ken Murray at Texas Tech, Jack Redgren at Vandy, and just a who's who of really good, solid people who were working on curriculum. They put me on there. And I was duck out of the water here. I'm a ex-college guy who was a high school guy, but they wanted a high school guy on there so we could have input on what they're teaching people curriculum-wise. So I said, okay, well, but the thing that set that up was that's when they started these Athletic Trainer of the Year awards. And because I don't think they knew a lot of them, so I ended up winning 3 of them.
Yeah.
Well, and then I had a case of somebody almost dying on the field that we saved. Well, all of a sudden, it became kind of legendary, and it wasn't done by design. It just kind of happened. I'm going, I'm creating a monster here.
Yeah.
You know, and next thing I know, Otho Davis, who was the executive director, he and Pinky show up in my office because we would like to talk to you because we want to put you on the road to talk. It talks about this in different district meetings. And I said, well, I don't know that I'm going to be allowed to do that. And she said, Otho goes, that's already been taken care of. He said, they will allow you to do that. Now, we're going to have to pay a little bit, and you have to watch what you're doing, but we can do it. So if they wanted somebody to talk, I mean, I did high school association talks. I did AFER.
Yeah.
I mean, just talking about how to develop the high school program. Well, Otho made sure that my sub was paid by the NATA. That they paid this athletic secretary a little extra to help me. So she made a little extra money. I got to go all over the country. And before I knew it, I'm going, oh my Lord. I mean, I can't keep this pace up.
Yeah.
I was doing the athletic training. I was doing travel circus show. And it was affecting my health.
Yeah.
And I finally had to decide, okay, what do I do here? Well, Bud had passed away by that time. Bud died in 1980. And I was still on the committee, getting ready to leave. After, I think 7 or 8 years I was on the committee. And I thought, well, I've done my time. Let's see what else is next. It just so happens, unfortunately, I'd gone through a divorce.
Yeah.
And it was a pretty hard court divorce, and it affected me a great deal. And JD had a secret meeting with Mr. Dick Hoover.
Yeah.
And next thing I know, who's sitting in my office saying, I'm going to hire you to go to Chicago. And I said, no, I don't want to go to Chicago. Yeah. I'm a hillbilly. I'm saying it right here. No, you're going to come to Chicago. We're going to do something special with my little company. And I said, no. He said, all right. He said, yes, you are. Said, you've already been taken care of. They're going to give you a leave of absence. You don't like it? Then we can move you back. I don't know. He said, I'm going to fly you up. So we were playing in the semi-state on Saturday, basketball. I fly up on Thursday to Chicago by, I don't know what kind of plane this was. I think rubber band and somebody threw. And I landed in Milwaukee. He picked me up and gave me a tour. And I said, I'm going to give you a week. I'm coming down. We're going to make this decision. Then I flew back on Friday late afternoon. They lost my luggage. And I ended up wearing a pair of shorts and a T-shirt. And it was cold. To the first game of the semi-state in basketball. And everybody thought that was quite funny. And I want to stay close at the banquet Friday night.
So was that in Seymour? Or was that
in Evansville?
Evansville.
Yep. So I'm going. No, that was in Terre Haute.
It was in Terre
Haute that year.
Yeah.
And so Booth comes to town about a week and a half later. He's sitting in the office. He goes, "We're going to make this decision." I said, "I just don't think I can want to do that right. I'm just now getting settled." He said, "Here's the deal. You got that junker car? I'll give you a new car. We'll take care of the car. And we'll double your salary. You will have an expense account that there are no holds barred as long as you're legit with it. And I will teach you this business." I said, "What business are you in?" I'm going, What am I really doing here? He says, "You're going to open up sports medicine, outpatient, physical therapy, athletic training services sites." I said, "I don't know of anybody that has not been all over the United States like you, including college people, dealing with all the different people. And we would like, I need you to open these up. There'll be other people will help you, but you're going to be my main man starting out." So guess what? I took it, moved to Chicago, and I never looked back.
Yeah.
The negative of that is I never went back to the traditional setting, and I missed the kids. I missed, this sounds stupid, I missed the smell of the grass that's cut when you're first starting to play, just little things. Wow, I'm missing that. I was making so much money for me at that time because I wasn't making a lot of money.
Right.
I mean, double your salary. Oh my God, I've never made this kind of money in my life.
Yeah.
So he says, "I'll train you." Well, he put me in the car. We made one tour for 1 week. Gets back, says, "Gas cards, credit card. Use it for the most. This is a backup. By the way, we need to open up 6 in Indiana. I'll probably see you in maybe 6 months. Think you can open them? I don't know what you can or not." And me the card. He says, "Go do it." And at that point, I'm going, okay. I got 5 open very quickly across the state of Indiana. And then he calls me into his office and says, okay, I know you're lacking one. I'll forgive you on that one. He's like, it was my fault. I hadn't had a chance to go talk to a couple people. And then he goes, we're going to open up others. When I left, and I did not do this all by myself. We had other people help. But we had opened up, I think, 118 of those clinics. And we were one of the really first ones. And I'm not going to say we were the first one, but we were one of the first ones who really expanded this out. And the concept was just not physical therapy, but where you provided good, solid high school, small college outreach, where that person is there and you're able to sustain good quality care. And it was an experiment. Now, I think it's being abused a little bit today, but back then it was more pure. I'm not saying it was perfect, but it was pure. And Hoover really tried to be innovative with that. We also did a teacher athletic training program over the course of several summers and during the year that he took a coach or a teacher who wanted to be an athletic trainer, and they went through a very intense period of education, mostly with people from Northwestern Medical School. And every one of those people passed the test the first time.
Wow.
Unheard of.
Yeah.
And then the NATA got worried. And they cut it. They wouldn't do it. They would have funded. But also would have funded. The board didn't want to. They were afraid it's going to undercut the educational program. I always thought it would be an adjunct to the educational program. But they thought differently. But anyhow, he did things like that. JD would come up. He would be teaching in there. Sendre would come and teach in there. Hoover was so innovative, so business oriented. Everything he did was all geared toward how do I change that? How do I make it better? How can I start something different? I know when I was in Ball State, he invited me up. Not only did I do the finals for wrestling, that's when they had the college all-star football game in the summer. And all the college All-Americans would come to Chicago, and they would play the NFL champion. I did that. I think Sendre was there. I don't know if JD ever did one. We did that a couple of years.
Yeah.
Well, you never got paid hardly anything. But you got all the food you could eat. You got all the clothing you could wear. I think Sendre got some free dental work out of that deal. And you got shoes, you name it. And then you got to go to the game, and you got paid enough that you could pay your expenses going home and have a little spending money. But he worked that, and I was always amazed on how he could take something so traditional and basic and switch it, and then make it something different and special. Yeah. And he did that. And you don't want to attest to this. Up until the last couple of weeks of his life, he's still throwing ideas at us. Yeah. And I think if he wasn't comatose, he'd probably give us a parting shot when he died.
I want to thank Glen for taking time to meet with us on that Saturday morning in Floyds Knob. It was a great talk to have, and we're going to have a couple more podcasts with Glen on there talking about his time with Dick Hoover, reminiscing about Jim Dickerson, also talking about his short stint in development at Ball State University, and maybe some active ankle stories as well. We also want to talk about Glen was instrumental in creating the Cardinal Sports Medicine Society Ring of Honor, which is a Hall of Fame for Ball State athletic training alumni and friends of the program. So I'm looking forward to getting a chance to talk to him about those experiences as well. He's also a pretty good cook, and you can find him and Mr. Rich Carey on YouTube doing their plate au pair videos. Great stuff. Stay with us. We're going to have some great podcasts coming up, and give us a rate on whatever podcasting platform that you're listening to us on. We really appreciate that as we're trying to get this thing started. So thank you for listening. Have a great day. We look forward to hopefully connecting again in the near future. Take care.